Hey guys, it's Neil from the Verge. I'm here with Russell Brandon. We're talking about the hack of the century. What is the hack of the century?
Yeah, it's okay. So it's 1.2 billion login password combinations, which is more than we've ever gotten in one bundle. The security firm called Hold Security has been tracking this group that they named Cybervor.
Ooh, very spooky.
It's a great name. And yeah, so through various methods, the Cybervor group had amassed 1.2 billion username and password combinations.
And the highest number before was like 700 million.
Yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot lower. So I mean, that's why the number kind of gets your attention. We're up in the B's, billion with a B, which is new.
Right, and the New York Times had like a big exclusive yesterday.
Yeah,
they're like inside it. But then there was immediately questions about whether or not this was true.
Yeah.
And you're saying it's not true.
Well, I have my doubts. I mean, the biggest thing that immediately people had questions about was everyone wants to know if they're on the list. Like, is it my login password combination? Hold Security, which had, in fairness, done all this work to uncover this stuff, said, well, if you're a subscriber, which means you give us $120 a year, then you can know if you're on the list.
That seems super scammy.
That's the thing. And so people were very uncomfortable with that, especially since it was this big exclusive in the New York Times. The New York Times certainly, I'm sure, didn't mean to just be driving all these people to Hold Security. So that felt a little weird. And then as you look more about at the numbers, is this really a direct comparison to other hacks that we've seen before? Or is this just a kind of did they just sort of get 1.2 billion names from various things? Some of them were theirs. We know that they had, as part of their earlier things, bought username password combinations, which is a thing that scammers do on the internet. So where did this really come from? Is it fair to call all of it a hack? Is it all 1.2 billion together?
So what's the weird part is that it seems like there's this hacking group, Cybervor, and then there's Hold Security. And Cybervor should be the villains, but it seems like Hold Security is doing some weird stuff to sort of turn themselves into the villains of the story. Yeah,
well, I think part of it is that Cybervor aren't very scary, other than the name. But I mean, I think the name's sort of an example of it. That like, so what are they using this for? They're not using it to like break into my bank account. They're not selling it to other criminals, which is often a thing that happens. They're using it to hack Twitter accounts, which is not a particularly lucrative or frightening thing to do with this information.
Me,
I mean, that's because you're verified. But I mean, no, it's just not, like, this isn't a very sophisticated thing to do with this information. So that's kind of whatever. And then also the way that, the method that they used, SQL attacks have been known, but it's not really that sophisticated of a method. So if you have this unprecedented hack, which 1.2 billion is certainly unprecedented, you expect them to be using unprecedented methods, that like these people did something really cool. Like with Target, they were hacking the air conditioning company, which is like, it's like the electronic version of like crawling in through the air vents. It was this cool thing, and they got in this way that no one had really thought about before. There's no real equivalent of that. They just did this thing that
they just collected a bunch of stuff and maybe hacked some other stuff.
And I mean, they looked over a lot of sites to see who was vulnerable for this, but this is a known vulnerability, so it's just sort of the scale of it is different. It's kind of quantity over quality.
But isn't that like actually known vulnerabilities being propagated in lots of places? It's kind of like a big story that has gone a little bit underreported, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it does seem like these people really did hack a lot of, like, they hacked a lot of people. Certainly. I think it does seem, the more you look at it, that those were maybe small firms who weren't very good at security, and sort of maybe these were not high-value username passwords in the way that, like, I use a really complicated one for my bank account, and, like, my Snapchat password is a little less high-pri. The thing is,
almost seems like that should be the other way around.
That's true. I have insurance on the bank. Snapchat, it's just my reputation. I can't get it back.
So bottom line, I mean, is this scary? I mean, it's the hack of the century, but is it the hack of the century? I think most people just want to know, is my stuff going to be safe? What steps can I take? What's sort of the next, what's the next frontier of terrifying things happening on the internet?
I mean, you should be incredibly scared all of the time. The internet's terrible. No, we always say, like, change your passwords, use a password manager. Don't duplicate the passwords across multiple things, which is multiple services, which is...
I mean, that's like the #1 advice. Don't use the same username and password.
Which is exactly what they're trying to do here. I mean, that's the attack they're doing. But if your name is one of the 1.2 billion names, which just statistically, if you're living on Earth, the odds are high, it doesn't really matter. Like, they're going to hack your Twitter, maybe.
Right.
If you duplicate that, but like, who cares?
I think people care if they hack their Twitter. So,
yeah, but I mean, it's
so
just
this is one of those
like,
moments where you should change your password. Like, bottom line, this is
guess, but like, I mean, it's sort of not even like if your Twitter password was the same. But I just think even in the scale of hacks, like, if you had shopped at Target, they would have your credit card information. It's like nothing. Like,
it's just password.
It's just very, even if you're one of the people who's affected, it's sort of a low impact thing, I think. It's just that the number's really high, so it's sort of more likely.
So just continue living your life free of all danger and carefree.
Yeah.
And change your passwords.